Hey, everybody, welcome to the premiere episode of season 2 of MD's Levrone Muscle Report, starring the one and only Hall of Famer, president, founder, all that good stuff of Levrone Supplements, one of my favorite people in this world, Kevin Levrone. What's up, Kevin?
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. How are you, man? How you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Yeah, it was good to run into you in Orlando at the Olympia Expo.
Yeah, I know. It was a great show. I was shocked because of the so many people was at the night show. It was good to see that.
Yeah. How loud was that music?
It was terrifying loud.
Ooh.
I had to hold my ears like this.
Yeah. And did you get a spotlight in your eye at any point?
No,
I did.
You did?
It's all right. I can see out of that eye again. It's all good.
Music was thumping. I was like, I don't know who's running that system, but they're trying to blow that thing out.
I mean, compare that production to some of the Olympias that you competed in back in the 90s. It had to be like, this was like like a major rock concert compared to some of those.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen a lighting show or stage that big ever.
And man, so I ran into you at the expo. You had a booth or a couple booth spaces for a Levrone Signature Series, and
Yes, we did.
Exciting news. You're launching in the United States finally, right?
Yes, we're launching with 3 different products. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, our Shaboom Pump, of course, be here available in the U.S.
Yeah.
Scatterbrain, and of course, essential amino acids.
Yeah, nice.
We're coming with 3, and eventually we're going to add, and the whole entire full line will be here. Right now, we're sorting out the as well. We're always, mad at work behind the scenes and everything, and sorting out the production of the manufacturing and everything like that. It's so much that go into launching a nutritional brand, but also just every country's different. Every country has their FDA laws and regulations.
Yeah.
So we have to switch some things around, formulate some things for America, FDA and all that stuff, and just go through the regulations, make sure our insurance and everything is where it needed. But we did all that stuff, so
of course.
We're here and we're ready to rock and roll, and they'll be able to buy it online as well as Amazon Prime will have it, as well as distributors and stuff. And then we'll be assisted with our good friend Jack Owak over at Bang Energy. He had a booth right next to us. Yeah.
Yes, of course. I couldn't miss it. There was a lot of dancing girls, and yeah, I managed to.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good to see you, Ron. You look like you put on some size, man.
It's an illusion, but I'm good at illusion. I'm the king.
I don't think that was an illusion. I mean, I'm looking at myself, but I'm looking at you, and I'm like, man, he's thick.
Well, I often say to myself, Kevin Levrone was bigger than me after 2 weeks of weight training when he was like 13. But it was all. That's why you're one of the greatest of all time. But so you did watch the show. That's good, because I want to touch on some points, not to go over the show specifically, but you've been around the sport a very long time now. You turned pro 30 years ago. You've seen a lot of evolution, a lot of changes, all these new divisions and everything. But I want to focus on bodybuilding. That's where we came up. That was the only division that existed when we got into all this, and we were fans looking at the magazines and following these pros. So this is a good chance to talk about, where do you think the sport's at today versus where people thought it might be, or where you hoped it might be, or is it better than what you hoped it would be? Is it worse? As a veteran of the game, what are some of your initial thoughts on where we're at right now in 2021 in pro bodybuilding?
Production wise, it's great production. They're packing a house at shows.
Yeah.
Now that COVID is somewhat out of the way, we're learning how to live with it. Social media wise has certainly advanced. Opportunity has advanced, I think, for bodybuilders to instantly contact their fans all over the world. I think far as the industry, far as a business, it certainly has grown, and the opportunity has definitely brought globally throughout the whole entire world. When I was competing back in the 90s and stuff, I mean, we're one of the first bodybuilders that ever went into Russia, and then looking at how far Russia has advanced to today, they've come a long way. As far as technology, as far as what they've learned in nutritional supplements, and seeing how the sport has evolved, it's amazing, man. And I wish it continued success and continued growth um, for us, as athletes. Prize money has certainly went up. You know, uh, I think 8-time Miss Olympia Lee was walking around, and I think back then they were probably getting 30 to 50,000, for first place. So,
Mm.
that money has to be coming from somewhere, and it's coming from the sponsors and the people showing up. So that's very, very. It's just good to see. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
do we miss Joe Weider? Of course, we miss Joe Weider. Are there things in structure deep down when you talk about the athletes and their presentations and stuff like that that could be certainly worked on? I think there's that right there has certainly fell by the wayside and fell off the edge as far as presentations and the possibilities of what structure of that's kind of like missing when Joe was there.
Yeah. I'm curious, on the Mr. Olympia competitors, there were 16 guys. Did anybody have a routine that you were like, wow, that was a great routine? Great presentation.
No.
So,
I think the closest one would have been Hunter
yeah, yeah,
Labrada. You could tell that he worked with his father,
yeah.
and he had a routine that looked like a sort of a kind of a old school bodybuilding routine, like a routine should be organized and structured.
Mm, yeah.
Hmm.
My favorite routine, I don't know if you agree. Did you see Terrence Ruffin brought back his Survivor? It's a remix of that, was it Destiny's Child, a Beyonce Survivor song? That was a routine he did in 2018 that people have been talking about for 3 years. And I was like, man, I wish he would do that routine again. And he just killed it. He almost got best poser at the Arnold 2 weeks before that, but they gave it to boy, I can't even remember who they gave it to. Logan Franklin. That's right.
Okay.
But yeah, the classic guys seem to be a lot more concerned, or they take
Yeah.
more time and effort into their routines
Yeah.
and really want to put on a good show.
I mean, I excuse me for saying that, Ron. I mean, uh, I didn't see the routines of the classic guys. I'm just, when you ask him that question, I'm just
Yeah.
responding to open bodybuilding.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the physiques. So Big Rami's the standard. He's now 2-time Mr. Olympia, probably about 295 pounds on stage, just a beast. The heaviest Mr. Olympia we've ever, well, Ronnie won it at 296 that one time, but Rami's not getting any lighter. He's not going to ever come in at like 270. That's never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Prettiest physique? No, not at all. Does he need a lot more? There's more things I want to see with him where I'd be a lot more satisfied saying this is the greatest physique in the world. Like if he had the muscular detail of a Hadi Chupan, if he had a little bigger calves, I'm very nitpicky because that's supposed to represent the best physique on the planet right now. But still, then you had a lot of people arguing for Brandon Curry to win, and they were very close. They were 1 point apart after Friday night's judging. Totally different. Talk about apples and oranges. It's kind of like when Dorian was Mr. Olympia, and you had guys with much better shape like yourself, like Flex Wheeler, like Sean Ray. So what do you do when you have someone who's got that beautiful shape and symmetry and those lines, and then you just have this brutal mass monster next to them? I mean, everybody makes their own decision. You're sitting there, to use our old phrase, how did you see it?
I think when something comes close to that, I think you should judge what that athlete does with the title. Or is he a great ambassador? What is he doing in the community? And setting back and looking at who was going to win, I certainly would have given it to Brandon. My opinion, because I knew when he had won that title, what he was going to do with that title. He went out into the community. Yeah. We saw him be involved with the kids. We saw him doing seminar everywhere Brandon went. That trophy went with him, and he let it be seen and known that this stands for something. This stands that you can accomplish something. And he sat there with that trophy and took it out on the football fields and everything.
Yeah.
And that was just, we hadn't seen that in a long time. And that's what we're missing. And I haven't seen Ramy do anything with the title in the last year that he's had that title. Nobody saw him. I mean, he just kind of like disappeared, went home, and you didn't hear of him until he actually started training in the gym with Dennis.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, a lot comes along with that title other than just the physique. So now let's go to the physique. I think overall, Brandon had better lines. I think better presentation, and I don't think a Mr. Olympia should win just because he's the biggest guy on the stage. I think when you talk about professional athlete, a IFBB pro, and again, that's what has kind of fell by the wayside when Joe Weider was alive, that, you know, we were held to certain standards. You know, we had to show up. I mean, I know these guys missed their peak. Both of them missed their peak. But we were held to do things. We had to get out on the road. We had to go to military base. We had to give seminars. We had to show up for magazine photo shoots with Chris Salon and Bill Dobbins and the whole Weider corporation. They had things structured. You know, our athletes, all the top 4 guys or whoever had athletes, whoever had contracts with Weider, we would go out and the world would see us. You know, and that's what's missing right now. So for me, it's kind of heartbreaking to see that, wow, you know, he wins and now what? You know, the guy won and now what? You know, so I think when you talk about a professional athlete, he has to be professional, giving back to the community, a well-spoken guy, which Brandon is. You know, he's a married guy, he's a family guy, and these things go a long way when you talk about a Mr. Olympia, because that's a man that other men, he's supposed to be the elite of men, you know, and that title carries a lot more than what it was awarded. So I would certainly just say, you know, I think if it's that 1 point of a difference, then Brandon should have had it.
Yeah. I mean, I have no doubt that in Egypt, Ramy probably does all kinds of appearances. Maybe he's active in the community over there, but it's a global title. It's the world. You're the world champion. You're the greatest bodybuilder in the world. I would have liked to have seen him do more. And, you know, like you said, there's no Joe Weider around anymore. I think the late Lynn Conkright was she your athlete manager back when you were with Joe?
Yeah, she was. I didn't know she passed away.
Yeah, a few years ago. But I mean, that was her thing, was she kept you guys, made sure you were going to your appearances, seminars, all that, keeping the Olympia brand in everybody's mind, being ambassadors. Is kind of like, I know this is a silly analogy, but Miss America or Miss Universe, these beauty pageant winners, a big part of their job once they win is they're supposed to go all over the place representing the crown, the title, and you know, they have to be a positive role model and an ambassador. You know, some people say that shouldn't matter. Just show up that day huge and ripped, and you know, you get your Sandown, your check, and you're good to go. But you know, for those of us who've been around the Olympia contest, and someone like yourself who's been on that stage so many times, it is more than that. It goes far beyond just an athletic competition. You're representing something, an ideal. I just wish you would do more, because Brandon, the 1 year Brandon was Mr. Olympia, he didn't turn down pretty much anybody for interviews. I saw him everywhere doing podcasts, interviews, appearances, like you said, you know, youth groups, football, all kinds of stuff. And that's important, but let's move on.
It was a fresh of breath air, you know, to see that. It really was. Going back, and I have to mention, and you know, you talk about, I hear everyone always comparing guys to today to the guys back when we were competing. You know, if you have one child that grows up in a home next door to your neighbor and the fathers are missing, you know, because he's not eating dinner and he's not praying at night and the structure isn't there and it's a little more loose, that kid's not going to do well in class compared to if there's the kid with the mother, the father, the structure in the home, and he's going to bed at 9 o'clock and he's coming home doing his homework before he goes out and play. Those structures that Joe had for us, it was like, it helped market and promote the brand of the Mr. Olympia. I mean, we had to be in shape, Ron. You know, we had photo shoots with Joe before. We had photo shoots with Joe afterwards. We were held accountable when we went out on the road guest posing. You know, those guest poses, those promoters will report back to Joe, hey, how did he look?
Yeah.
You know, how was he treating people? You know, in our contract, we couldn't be out here doing crazy things because we were paid to uphold the Weider IFBB, Mr. Olympia, Joe Weider, Mr. Olympia, his brand. And there were athletes waiting to come up behind us if we weren't in shape and we showed up at shows and didn't do what we were supposed to do or missed things that, you know, we were going to lose our contract. You know, back then it was probably about 148 pros and it was probably about 15, 16 of us that had contracts. So, and under those contracts were strict rules and regulations that you had to carry yourself. You had to, you know, be a businessman and not take things personal. So I think falling off as far as the conditioning, going back to that, there's no one that these athletes have to answer to. You know, it's up to them to decide what they want to do or what they want to take coming into a show. You know, there's no checkpoints along the way before they get there. You know, we had to show up in Woodland Hills in California, you know, 2 months out, a month out, you know, and so Joe could look at us and see what was going on. And we better make sure that we were in shape walking on that stage and that we had a decent presentation because he was sitting down there holding each and every one of us accountable.
Yeah.
That's what's missing right now. And I can't come down on the athletes and say that, you know, again, if you haven't been taught, then you don't know. And I can only talk about this because I had the great privilege and I was blessed to have that opportunity to, have Joe Weider and have a Weider contract and come in at that level in the 90s where he was there. But when he was there, just like he taught Arnold, he taught all of his champions, all of his Mr. Olympians, and these guys have nobody to teach them. They have no structure in place for them. So I don't necessarily blame them or come down on them, but when you haven't been taught something, you don't know how to read unless somebody teaches you how to read. And I think that's also what's missing.
Interesting. So another thing I'm curious, you know, we had two divisions back in the day. We had men's bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding. Mr. Olympia would be in some city at one date, and then a few weeks later, there'd be the Ms. Olympia somewhere else. Now we have 11 divisions all consolidated into one mega weekend. You know, sometimes I still struggle with the idea of all these other divisions. Like, do we really need men's physique and wellness and keen? Do we need all these divisions? But then I think, would we still have a sport if we had just kept it limited to purely bodybuilding? Would we still have a sport? Would we still have an Olympia weekend anymore? Or would it have gone bankrupt, 10, 15 years ago? What do you think?
I don't think it would have gone anywhere. I think most of the people that showed up in that auditorium were showing up to see who was going to be Mr. Olympia. You know, people want to see the freaks. You know, they want to see the big guys, you know. Those guys are stars, you know, and when you talk about not taking anything away from the other classes or anything like that, but people want to see a freak show, you know, and that's what the Mr. Olympia give them. Now, because of all the other classes and everything else involved, are there more people there? Yes. But to answer your question, would it fall off? No, it certainly would not fall off because these guys are getting bigger. It's people going to show up to see who wins.
Right. True. Another thing I struggle with still is social media. You know, on one hand, I miss the days when fans had to be a bodybuilding fan. It took a certain level of devotion, commitment. You had to buy tickets, get yourself to the contest like the Mr. Olympia or to seminars. If someone was a Kevin Levrone fan and they lived in, I don't know, Nebraska, they had to either get their butt to some contest you were competing at or someplace where you're giving a seminar, or they could hope to read something about you in the magazines. Now it's accessible to anybody with a phone. Everyone's got an iPhone or Android or whatever. Everyone can see their favorite bodybuilders on their own Instagram pages every day. On YouTube, there are thousands upon thousands of YouTube channels that do commentary and play footage. Some of them just outright steal the pay-per-view footage. A lot of them do these days, but it has made it more accessible so that back in the day, say there were X amount of people that were bodybuilding that followed the sport of bodybuilding. Maybe now that's X times 5 because they don't have to invest as much time, energy, and money into being a bodybuilding fan. But they're not as hardcore of a fan as the fans had to be back in the old days. But I still think I think it's a good thing that we have all this interest, even if some of them are more casual fans.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I agree. There's a platform for the fans to see. Now, what I don't agree with is, every year, a month out, they start with the online prejudging. These guys start with the online prejudging with the pictures in the mirror, looking fantastic, looking this, and just put everything out there. Yeah. With us, there was a mystery. You didn't know what we were going to look like. So people were waiting on the edge of the seat for that curtain to go up and to see what you were going to bring. And nowadays, these guys are disclosing everything before the show even starts. And they don't even look like that by the time the show comes, So that's taking the mystery out of it. Everyone wants to always know, well, how is that mystery guy? How is that Dorian Yates called the Shadow? How is he looking? What is he doing? How's Sean Ray going to show up out in California? What's going on with Levrone back here on the East Coast? Yeah. So everybody was like just dialing in just to see that battle go down, the grand finale, and we don't have that no more, Ron. And that's kind of like sad. Do the guys have to put what they look out there? No, they don't have to do that. I think that's kind of like also what's watering it down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, nobody looks as good on stage. Stage lighting is brutal. It is unforgiving. It's not like, because you and Scott, we did an interview, one of the early shows you did a few months back. Your training partner Scott talked about that Night of Champions that you won, where that was like your most insane condition. And I wish there were some pictures like with that good hotel room lighting or gym lighting right before that, so I could see that and appreciate it, because I've seen the pictures from that show, but they're stage pictures, so they never give you all that little detail. Like all these guys, like you said, this is why a lot of fans now are kind of messed up in the head as to what to expect. Everybody on their own, the day or 2 or 3 days before a show, in this perfect lighting in their gym, the hotel room, in their kitchen, you see every little fiber and you're like, oh my gosh, how could nobody can beat that. That's the best bodybuilder in the world. And then, we get 20 of them on stage together. But, back in the day, like you said, I remember the mystery. Like we'd be sitting there waiting for Dorian to come out. That's what he looks like, because we hadn't seen him in a whole year. Nothing. Yeah. Not one peep from the guy.
Yep. And then what Joe Weider would do is, like, a month out from the Mr. Olympia, if you notice, a month out, like just before the Mr. Olympia comes, because the magazines came out monthly, 30 days out from the Mr. Olympia, you see that black and white picture of Dorian Yates on Flex magazine, and then they would release those black and whites of him in there. Yeah. You'd be like, oh my God, right? Yeah. And then people just wait to see what he's going to look like. So, man, the marketing back then was just incredible, how it was tied in with the athletes and what they expected and what we were honed in to do. Joe was actually a genius at the marketing and controlling the athletes and presenting the hype. It was incredible. I remember him telling me, Kevin, what makes the Mr. Olympia different than any other show is because the people come, I fill the seats because they come to see if the Mr. Olympia will be defeated. Because that was the only show that, that's what makes the Mr. Olympia unique and different, because not back then, Mr. Olympia was hard to defeat the Mr. Olympia.
Yep.
People would pack the seats just to see, well, let's see if he loses this year, But nowadays that mystery is even gone, because, how many Mr. Olympias have we had? A lot of them. Some of them only last 1 year.
Yeah.
So that whole marketing mystery, that's gone. So it's kind of blending in, with other shows other than the production.
Yeah. See, I'm going to, when I hear you talk about that, to me, I think the judging is so much more fair because there were so many years, so many times a guy was reigning Mr. Olympia, and almost every Olympia, Dorian, Lee, Ronnie, Jay, they all had at least one, if not more. Even Arnold had at least one Olympia where they didn't win that show. They
Yeah,
they got
I
their
agree.
ass they got their ass handed to them on stage. Yet
I agree.
somehow, at the end of the night, they still have their hand up. They still got that Sandow. And I remember, fans would be very, very upset. I remember a lot of boos and stuff like that. And and I do believe it was tied into things like marketing back then.
It had to be, yes, of course.
You got to knock out the champ.
He said, "Don't, yeah, you got to knock out the champ. It can't be close to what's going to win, But hey, Dorian Yates opened up the European market as well. That was great for the sport. So, it's also a business, and we realize that, it has to be operated like a business. So, just because you don't win a show, you can't take it personal.
Yeah, I do. I have to commend head judge Steve Weinberger, Tyler Mannion, the whole crew now. I think they do an awesome job. It's a very hard job. It's a thankless job because the only people that are ever happy are the winners and the winners fans. Everyone else think the judge are more. I'm still hearing, it's been a week later, I'm still hearing the Nick Walker fans, a lot of the Curry fans, a lot of them are very upset that their favorite guy didn't win. But I think, you could make arguments. It's a subjective sport. You can always make arguments, but all in all, I think the judging is so much more fair and impartial now than ever.
It is,
So that's a great thing.
Yeah. So
final thing I want to touch on, because this has been a year we've lost a lot of people. John Meadows, I knew him a little bit. What an amazing guy he was. Family man, so generous with his time and his knowledge, experienced people. And then, of course, 2 days before the Olympia, George Peterson, 2 days, literally about 48 hours before he would have been on stage at the 212 Olympia, passed away in his hotel room. Do you feel like the sport is getting more dangerous for the athletes, the participants? Versus like 20, 30 years ago.
We have more athletes, more things are going to happen. So you gotta look at it that way, percentage wise. For the athletes out there who everybody's chasing a pro card, a pro card is not willing to risk your life for, it's just a title. And God doesn't see titles, he sees the heart of a human being. Sometimes these guys and these women, and you see how they come in and you see how they just transition and they completely change because they're chasing a dream, just be smart. No one can be held accountable, I don't think, for something that someone else has agreed to do. Take Michael Jackson, for instance. I mean, Conrad, he went to prison because he was actually administering it to Michael Jackson for months and months and months and months. And you could actually prove that, we knew that, he was a doctor that was assigned to him that was actually dripping it in his arms.
Right.
But I think these athletes, they go by, well, what someone tell them to do. And they want to win so bad. So they will take that risk and take their lives in their own hands. And that's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing that we're losing them rapidly, one after the other. Every year there's something going on. With that being said, Ron, I think that it should be, again, the structure, something needs to be implemented that can guide these athletes. Maybe 2 weeks out or 30 days out, maybe they need to go through a physical. If you're an IFBB pro, maybe you should take a physical. Then maybe when you show up at the event, at the press conference, before that, when you're out, you're getting your numbers and all that, maybe these guys need the blood work done. Maybe that's a time to for them to go through another complete physical to see if they're in condition to show up and go through the battle of that title. I think somewhere along the line, if we had some kind of structure in place medically leading up to these events, and then even after the event, after the event's over, you got to check in, and also go through the physical exam to figure out how much oxygen you have before the show starts. Just certain things like this. I think if this protocol was in place, because these guys show up on a Wednesday, I think we probably could, prevent some lives from being passed away, and I think that's something to consider. I know when Joe and stuff, we were here, we had oxygen backstage, but then again, I mean, we had to take a test before, for diuretics, but I'm talking about 3 days out, you know, 3 days out, 4 days out, when these guys start dropping their water that last week and dropping the sodium and going through these drastic changes. When you're an athlete, a bodybuilder, dieted down, and your body fat is anything below 4%, you can't even think straight. You know, you really cannot even think straight. And they're taking their lives in their own hand without the education of a medical person looking over them. We have to look over these athletes 4 days out from the show before they get to these shows and really check them out to see if they're healthy, you know, and monitor them leading up to the show. I think this would make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So you only worked with a coach very briefly. You coach yourself most of the time. Was it only that one show, that one Arnold you had a coach?
Dave Palumbo was the only one.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
it was Dave Palumbo. You know, and then again, you know, he would suggest things, and then I was in my right state of mind to say, nah, I don't think I feel comfortable with doing that. Or, yeah, I know you want me to do this, but I'm going to try this and I'm going to see how I feel.
Mm.
You know, you have to be tuned in to make the final decision what works best for you. You know, you cannot put your life in someone else's hands and just walk away and just see what happens, because we're all genetically different. Some of our systems are stronger than others. DNA is completely different. You know, you might I didn't need a lot of anything for my body to respond. So what somebody could take, I could take half of that or a quarter of that, and it would almost put me on my knees, you know? Yeah.
It's called a hyper responder. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because you have to have personal accountability. You have to be responsible for your own life, because at the end of the day, it's your life. You're the one that's going to live or die, not your coach, not somebody else. So I think that's an important message, because we don't want to lose any.
Yes.
I'm sure we're going to lose more people. It's just, you know, an odds thing. We have so many pros now, but let's, you know, I hope to God there's not, we don't have to go through that again with these.
Me also, Ron.
Yeah. 37 years old. George was only 37. 37.
It's sad.
You know,
it's sad. You have a whole life ahead of you.
You and I in our 50s, think back 37, think of all the things we've done and experienced since then that we wouldn't have had if we had died when we were 37.
You know, we can't blame all these things on, well, whatever. But like I said, you know, whatever was going on, if there was some kind of physical that you're held accountable leading up to these big events like this, I think it would help. You know, a lot of them might have underlying health issues that we don't know about.
100%.
You know, so, but, you know, hey, we can't sit here and guess. We need to start getting there and figuring out, hey, by the way, if you are an IFBB and you're IFBB pro and you're carrying that pro card, maybe you need to turn into your physical, you know, every 6 months to the IFBB office as well. Mm-hmm. Let us know that you're happy, that you're healthy, you know, leading up to this show, you know.
Yeah, food for thought to the powers that be who might be listening. Food for thought. Great ideas from Kevin. Kevin, I know you got to run off. You got your son is doing very well in football again, I'm sure. Yes. Yeah.
I have to head up to the school to give the kids a pep talk. We got a game tomorrow. So
awesome, man. Great. See, I love to hear that stuff. This is what life's all about: family and, you know, enjoying your kids and enjoying life. That's how it should be.
Yep.
Life after bodybuilding. Thank you, Kevin. This has been a really good premiere for season 2, MD's Levrone Muscle Report. I'm sure Kevin's going to get some great guests for us in the near future. Can't wait. Appreciate all you guys watching. Subscribe to the channel, like, and do all that. Kevin Levrone, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Ron. Peace, my friend.
And we'll see you guys next time.